Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, previous speakers have provided us with a wealth of information about what happens on the ground. They told us about tools we have available to address these challenges. But how can we connect the dots? This is the question I have been asked to address. It is a very pertinent question. Let me explain. 2 weeks ago, I met in Niger the governor of the country's southeastern region. He told me that recent inundations not only had displaced numerous people, the river had also changed its course and is now flowing where people previously lived in their villages. These people need to be relocated, but finding land to settle them and resources to rebuild their lives will be a huge challenge. This is just one example of the loss and damage experienced by millions and millions of persons affected this year by flooding in Pakistan and so many other countries. The discussion with the governor also reminded me of the elderly leader of a displaced pastoralist community in Southern Ethiopia, who I met some years ago. He told me that even if I would give him 100 animals, he would not go back to his previous lifestyle. Clearly, this community had reached the limits of adaptation to recurring drought. And I also recall a recent report by IFRC about people, mainly women and children, who decided to move from southern Angola to northern Namibia when they were no longer able to cope with the impacts of drought. Displacement, migration, and planned relocation are the 3 forms of human mobility mentioned in paragraph 14F of the Cancun Climate Change Adaptation Framework. They are also the topic of the work by the Task Force on Displacement set up under the Warsaw Mechanism on Loss and Damage to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage in the context of human mobility. But at the same time, climate-related human mobility is also an issue in other fora, in particular those linked to the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Global Compact on Migration, or at the regional level, the Kampala Convention on Internal Displacement in Africa. Connecting the dots, it first means to ensure policy coherence across these different silos, while at the same time safeguarding the specificities of each of these policy processes. The Task Force on Displacement and the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism have contributed to this policy coherence by recommending in 2018, for instance, to strengthen preparedness, including early warning systems, contingency planning, evacuation planning, and resilience building strategies and plans, or to recall the guiding principles on internal displacement and seek to strengthen efforts to find durable solutions for IDPs, or to facilitate orderly, safe, and regular migration and enhance opportunities for such migration pathways, including through labor mobility. These cross-references to disaster risk management and disaster risk reduction, internal displacement policies, and orderly, safe, and regular migration provide a model that should and can be followed by government delegations, civil society actors, and other stakeholders whenever they engage in relevant policy processes. Consistency of messaging across policies is essential for connecting the dots, but even more important is consistency in robustly implementing these commitments. Regarding the latter, a baseline mapping on the implementation of commitments related to addressing human mobility challenges in disaster and climate change contexts under the Global Compact on Migration, launched earlier this year by PDD together with partners, found that at least at legal and policy levels, progress is being made regarding the commitment under GCM Objective 2 to minimize adverse environmental drivers that compel people to leave their country of origin. However, in contrast, we are really lagging behind with the implementation of Objective 5 to expand migration pathways for vulnerable migrants, including those affected by climate change. This is worrying. As the International Panel on Climate Change recently highlighted, Some areas and regions are already reaching the limits of adaptation to global warming. We must therefore increase efforts to prepare for a future where human mobility in disaster and climate change contexts will increase. Second, connecting the dots requires to learn from each other across relevant policy areas. Here, the Santiago Network on Loss and Damage, which is tasked with catalyzing technical assistance of relevant organizations to support developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change, should not reinvent the wheel. The network should rather engage with actors that have important and huge experience in other areas, such as disaster risk reduction, internal displacement, or migration, and mobilize them for support. Finally, connecting the dots means making climate financing accessible and available to countries in need of averting, minimizing, and addressing displacement in climate change contexts. Preventive action in areas at particular risk of displacement, as well as durable solutions for IDPs, or establishing conditions for regular migration and for the protection of migrants. All of these activities are very costly. They require robust financial support. Thank you.